like these agents. You know what's interesting? If I'm not mistaken, Woodard's agent, Kelly's agent, the Texas A&M, they're all the same agent.
So I think the first part that people are taking issue to, that I know people are taking issue to, is that he's kind of waited till after he got fired to kind of throw this napalm during what is the biggest, I guess, college football show. It's the biggest one. And for me, it's two parts, right? Like, I think Josh Pate does a really, really good job as a personality. He doesn't try to be a journalist, or doesn't try to be an insider. But the issue is when you reach a certain level in college football, they expect every single personality to also be an insider that serves them. And when you kind of cross over to that side, people are going to be upset when you get things and you hold them and you don't share them with us.
And I told you he'd be my ideal candidate, but I never believed it was possible. Apparently it was possible. If Scott Woodward closes this, it's beyond a Grand Slam hire.
Fun midweek point of college football, a lot going on. I don't really know what to call these videos. Make sure you like and subscribe. Want to get right into it. The governor of Louisiana, Jeff Landry, had this to say, and reacting to it is a dream of mine. This is about the LSU job, and I believe the big thing is, are they going to let Scott Woodward make the next hire? Now, Scott Woodward was the coach that hired Jimbo Fisher, and obviously he had a ridiculous buyout. And then Brian Kelly, and his buyout was very expensive. This is what Governor Landry had to say.
To foot the bill. So, yeah, I absolutely. Who's that? No. I can tell you right now, Scott Woodward is not selecting the next coach. Hell, I'll let Donald Trump select it before I let him do it. I don't know, but the Board of Supervisors is going to come up with a committee, and they're going to go find us a coach. Hold on. One real quick thing on that. Because here's what y'all reporters need to do. Y'all need to start looking at who represents all these people, like these agents. You know what's interesting? If I'm not mistaken, Woodard's agent, Kelly's agent, the Texas A&M, they're all the same agent. Like, you realize if I would be, I don't know how y'all.
This is a governor feeling so bamboozled. He feels like bamboozled by an agent right now. Like, he's taking this buyout and the firing and the payout as like a direct insult to him. Obviously, because it's a state school, but you could tell he's really hurt by this. And people in Louisiana, they really want to win football games. And when they don't win football games, when they don't win championships, there is this level of frustration. You could tell, like, you would never, ever, ever get this in Ohio. And this is part of what makes LSU a great job, but also like such a high pressure cooker job.
How many sports writers we got here today? Just you. We should have a bunch. Okay? Like, this is ridiculous. Lawyers would be disbarred for the way these agents act and the way they're able to represent. In fact, there's no doubt, they may even represent some of the players now. Like, it's really time for the NCAA to put on some guardrails in college sports. Because, and it's fine. We don't need the guardrails. If big billionaires want to spend all that kind of money, no problem. But if I got to go find $53 million from Kemp, it's not going to be a pleasant conversation. I'm just telling you.
Definitely not playing. And like, the LSU job is like a really great job. And I think like that governor kind of represents some of, I guess, the passion that comes with that job. So it is fascinating that he took shots at the NCAA, that he also took shots at the agents. Like, he was not, like, just definitely not playing around in respect to kind of everything that's going on over there. But it makes sense, and they're going to have to fit the bill. But I believe that Brian Kelly is also going to have to try to find a new job as well. So that's kind of like a different little part of that. And on Brian Kelly and some of the, I guess, what do we want to call it? On Brian Kelly and some of the job hunting, Tom Mars posted this today. Interestingly, Brian Kelly's contractual obligation to find another job is spelled out in just one sentence of his LSU contract, with no reference to what he must do to show he's trying to find another job and what consequences will be if he does not meet the obligation. So, I guess more on this, if we're really, going through this, like one of the things that I think is important to reference is James Franklin has similar language in his contract, meaning that like the university only has to kind of pay the difference. So if Brian Kelly, or I guess for James Franklin, I had to read this more now, but for Brian Kelly or for James Franklin, like if he took the Virginia Tech job, which it looks like he's going to take, then Penn State would only own the difference. So almost nothing sometimes, which is why I think that Brian Hartline was partially floated as like an attractive spot, because like if James Franklin got the Virginia Tech job or the Florida job and got paid, $8 million, $9 million a year, then it would really take Penn State off the hook for just about the majority of the buyout. And then additionally, they could hire Brian Hartline without having to pay a ridiculous like buyout on the head coaching front. So I thought that was kind of like important to Penn State. Now for LSU, here is the IP license agreement, November 28, 2021. Employees shall exercise due diligence and good faith in seeking qualifying employment, so as long as the liquidation damage obligation exists. Only one line. Now, Tom also showed Ryan Day's contract and some of the language around his buyout. For the purpose of this agreement, comparable positions shall include other employment at the market rate for Division I collegiate football coaching positions or professional college football positions. Coach shall report monthly to the director or director's designee on employment applications and progress in actively seeking other employment. Coach shall notify Ohio State immediately if a coach has obtained other employment or has been engaged to provide service, basically get an offer, either as an employee or as an independent contractor. Coach's lack of diligence in seeking comparable position or coach's refusal of a reasonable offer of a comparable position shall void Ohio State's responsibility to pay the post-termination payments. That was Ohio State's. Taken care of. Like Doug Archie, like for all the hate that he gets, I think that that's kind of on him and Gene when they did obviously sign Ryan Day to this. They are going to basically stay on Ryan Day because they know if we fire Ryan Day, he should absolutely get a job hereafter. And we've got contract in this language to spell out that like you have to at least try to get another job. Again, back to the Brian Kelly, it's just one line. Employees shall exercise due diligence and good faith in seeking qualifying employment, so as long as the liquidation damage obligation exists. So this was a failure, it looks like, by the LSU AD athletic department for there to be that much different in like language. And the Brian Kelly one was signed after the Ryan Day agreement in 2019. So, it's just one of those things that like when you go through it and read it, I think it's really fascinating, some of the language of some of these coaches' contracts. And then for Tom Mars, he had this to say: Brian Kelly did not hold a gun to Scott Woodward's head to make him sign a contract with an enormous buyout. Woodward did this on his own. It's not Kelly's fault. Woodward made a mind-blowing, colossal mistake, but LSU fans seem unfazed about that. They'd rather blame Kelly. Now, yes, the buyout thing is big. I do think, though, on the buyout side of things, I think sometimes to get coaches to leave really big-time jobs and get to your school, I think the buyout is used as a weapon, right? Like, Brian Kelly wasn't going to go to LSU and leave Notre Dame, a nice, stable job, if he didn't have that big-ass buyout to kind of help him if something goes wrong. So I think that's more what this is. But I did find it at least entertaining to kind of hear a lawyer, I guess, speak about the good old buyout structure, especially because, like the buyouts are now a college football hot topic. Like buyouts are a topic because now money is more prevalent in college athletics than it ever has been, and universities have tighter budgets because players are being paid, which they should be. So it makes that just, I guess, a little bit of a hot button, to say the least. I guess a really hot button, to say the least. I did have one other thing that I wanted to hit. Oh, I saw this excerpt from a from an ESPN article. I'm not going to read the whole article because I don't really care too much to. But this from whoever at ESPN, from his disastrous industry coach speak at an LSU basketball game in which he pronounced family with a fake Southern accent, family. That was thicker than rocks. I don't know how to say that. Kelly just never seemed to fit in, and he wasn't blind to that. This offseason, Kelly worked with a Washington, D.C. based image consultant to try to improve his public persona. Look, shout out to Brian Kelly. He wanted people to look at him in a better light. And I, for one, I guess can understand that. Staying on Brian Kelly, I do want to get to this because I think
of
it's at
roster
least
construction in the
fascinating
most
enough.
critical.
Oops. I think it's fascinating enough. Josh Pate's been catching a lot of heat for some of his like Brian Kelly talk. I want to play this and kind of give my thoughts just because I like Pate, but Pate has done the thing where on your way up, everybody wants to root for you. Everybody. And then once you get to the top and you're there for a little while, people cannot wait to tear you down. I feel like Josh Pate is entering that phase of his career because beforehand, right or wrong,
But
everyone always viewed Josh Pate as gold. Right now, everyone's finding a reason to hate Josh Pate and call him an industry sellout, whatever you want to call him. But this was him on some Brian Kelly stuff.
in the most critical parts of roster construction season there, portal recruiting, this dude was on a beach. And it never really got talked about publicly. And I never talked about it publicly. But hey, man, he's gone now. So I'll talk to you about it now. I lost all professional respect for how he was going about his business there when I found out how checked out he was on some of the most critical parts of LSU football. And here's the thing, it's not a personal thing with him. I'm fine with Brian Kelly.
So I think the first part that people are taking issue to, that I know people are taking issue to, is that he's kind of waited till after he got fired to kind of throw this napalm during what is the biggest, I guess, college football show. It's the biggest one. And for me, it's two parts, right? Like, I think Josh Pate does a really, really good job as a personality. He doesn't try to be a journalist, or doesn't try to be an insider. But the issue is when you reach a certain level in college football, they expect every single personality to also be an insider that serves them. And when you kind of cross over to that side, people are going to be upset when you get things and you hold them and you don't share them with us. Because look, like, we've been with you, you tell us this information. And so then it can come across as you waited to kick Brian Kelly while he's down instead of letting people know what happened. And it's like the access thing. I heard Pablo Torre talk about this. It's hard to report super thoroughly on the sport that you cover because when you report super thoroughly on all the individual things that are happening, it upsets people. And then when people get upset, it makes your life harder in terms of access. Access is built on trust, and the general belief is that journalists should have the trust of the people more than they have the trust of the people they get the stories from. And that's kind of the distinction. But again, like, this isn't journalism. Like, this is Josh Pate, the personality. That's who people fell in love with. That's who people really liked. And people are killing him for that because he had the whole thing about, like, I heard about this and I kept it quiet. And now you're going public with it after the fact, which I've got no problem with. I think that there's just this weird blurred line with college athletics because a lot of times the people that are the personalities historically in college football also have been the insiders. And now there's kind of a pivot and a switch coming with the way media is being directed.
Personally. But professionally, there are not many jobs like the head coach at LSU. In some cases, you're landing kids he knows very little about. Guys, they added staffers that in some cases he didn't know a ton about. Now that this era has come to an end, I think you'd be shocked at how little interaction he had with some people before they were added to his staff. Consequently, those people ended up being some of the best people to arrive in that building. He made some additions there that ended up being train wrecks. So that's what had me check out on Brian Kelly.
I wonder if he's talking about some full-time coaches, because I also know that, like, a lot of the full-time coach stuff, Zach has talked about this, a lot of it comes from agents and agent suggestions, but neither here nor there. And there's always like a second command at some of the big programs. Urban's talked about that really, really a lot as well.
So you probably noticed, if you've watched or listened to the show for a while, you've noticed I had kind of a tone change about him. Well, that was why. But the L on that chest right there stands for Louisiana. Brian Kelly had no interest in Louisiana. He had interest in two letters. One of them's B, the other one's K.
And, I thought that I thought Josh Pate did a really good job in the reaction show, but Travis Rockhold said, but you wait till he's gone to speak up. The professional thing to do is to say it when it happened, which is funny. And I think that Pate replied, actually, the professional thing to do is respect the wishes of those sharing information with you. Thanks, though. Travis. So why not just mention it, but without saying, I didn't say it then, but saying it now? Yeah. There's just a line. And I don't think Pate's a journalist. I think Pate's a really good personality that is on a show. Like, I don't think I'm a journalist. I think I try to follow some, like, the journalistic ethics things, but, like people tell me stuff all the time. Like, I don't feel obligated to share with people because that's not really my profession. But I do think in college football, there's so much currency with being an insider, at least in internet culture, that there is some of that, like, weird crossover that people kind of, I guess, like, get into or dig into. I don't really know how to go about it. So the whole Brian Kelly thing is a fascinating thing, and then people started to dig up some old stuff about how Josh Pate kind of spoke about how Notre Dame was the ultimate limiter, and I believe he called Notre Dame like a Prius, but you're trying to win a race or something like that. And Notre Dame people are now coming out of the woodworks and said, "See, look, it wasn't that we were the Prius. It was more like people that are commenting on Notre Dame don't know what actually goes on over here." And so Josh Pate kind of continued. Again, he's been getting kind of grilled on this LSU thing because he was a big early believer in Brian Kelly and him being successful at LSU.
You do clown things, you have to atone for those things. And around here on the Pate State campus, the way we atone for clown behavior is I've got to put on the clown nose like such. Let me take you back to November 29th, 2021, 8:04 p.m. I'm excited. LSU has just hired Brian Kelly, and I say the following. We discussed this name on this very message board several weeks back, and I told you he'd be my ideal candidate, but I never believed it was possible. Apparently it was possible. If Scott Woodward closes this, it's beyond a Grand Slam hire. I have listened to
the laugh track behind it is awesome, and like Pate owning up to the miss on a take is incredible because most people won't, and most people will make excuses for why the take didn't work out. I thought this was good. I thought this was good YouTube TV. I thought this was good college football content.
Doubters, and have yet to hear a logical reason why LSU folks shouldn't be over the moon excited about the hire. I continue. Notice my professionalism and persistence here. Brian Kelly has essentially been trying to Brian Kelly has essentially been trying to compete in the Daytona 500 with a Prius. A Prius. Given the limitations at Notre Dame relative to college football's Tier 1 programs.
This is a brutal thing to get dug up, especially like when people are kind of like excited to like see Pate fail all of a sudden, which is like a weird, I guess, like plague of success. I think part of me is glad that like I'm not big enough right now to where the point where people dig up stuff, because that's just some crazy shit that's been wrong. I mean, hell, like my Drew Aller and Penn State takes are some of the worst takes I've ever had. I guess I'm thankful enough that enough people thought they were going to be really good. But this is brutal, man. This is brutal. But again, like this is, I think, the best way to own it.
To even have them consistently in the college football playoff conversation has been incredible. If you want to know how incredible it was, keep an eye on the program once he leaves. Can I finish?
That's shout out Marcus Freeman, man. Shout out Marcus Freeman. And for Notre Dame fans, they shouldn't really be dancing on the grave of Brian Kelly. They should be using this to like pump up their own program, because they have a program that, you know, can lose a really great coach and continue to win. I mean, they just played a natty last year, which is crazy.
I finish. Okay, I'm done. I wouldn't have done this had there not been anyone warn me, but several of my Notre Dame folks warned me. Now, at the time, I listened to them, and I thought it was sour grapes. The other night, went in on him pretty hard, and I was leveling some of the same criticism. Some of the Notre Dame folks were listening and saying, oh, we were saying that like 5 years ago, 6 years ago, 7 years ago. Yeah, I just didn't buy it. So they were right on that. I was wrong on that. I had to learn it the hard way. I mean, there is no harder way to learn something than wearing a clown nose on your own show and reading posts of yours on message boards from 4 years ago. It wasn't Marcus Freeman doubt. It was Notre Dame doubt. I should have been doubting Brian Kelly, and I doubted Notre Dame instead.
That's the best way to go about it. Like, that's the simple, like, best way to go about it. And I think that Josh Pate's done a really good job. And like, it is weird that like he's become like the kind of the fun coach to hate. But again, like once you get to the top, it's kind of, kind of how it goes. So I found it fascinating, and I was here for it. And then I just want to play this from Kirby Smart on Brian Kelly and on LSU, and then I want to move on and talk a little bit about Indiana, our good old Big Ten brethren.
Another 10,000-foot question with Brian Kelly being fired. Guy won more than 70% of his games. It seems like the expectations in the new college landscape has led to more midseason firings. What do you make of the state of the game, and is there any sort of danger here?
I don't know. I mean, it's the world we live in. Everybody's got a voice. Everybody listens to somebody. A lot of I don't know enough about that situation, to be honest with you. That specific situation. I think you're asking a general view, but I don't know enough about what's going on over there. Got enough things to worry about in our own house, and that's what I focus on. It's obviously a tough situation on everybody. I mean, let's be honest. It's the players dealing with it, fans.
You could tell by listening to a lot of these coaches that there is a level of surprise that comes with Franklin fired and Kelly fired. Like, these are big coaches, and like hearing even Sharon Moore for like a week and a half, like on the hot, like or on the warm seat person on Michigan fans. There is definitely like a level of surprise because like all these college football coaches grew up in an era where having a high floor meant you were good for a while. And I think a lot of people, myself included, wondered if players getting paid would help coaches stay put, because no one wants to pay the buyouts, and obviously the university is operating under tighter budgets. But really, the playoff has placed a premium on winning big games. And, I heard this from a former Ohio State player now in media. He told me, like, look, also, like, not having the end-of-the-year bowl game champions and having the culture of that completely change also is going to heat up some hot seats, because now there's only one successful season at the end of the year, and that means something. So you can just tell with Kirby, though, it's you hear it. You just hear in his voice.
Dealing with it, coaches dealing with it at this time in the middle of a season. I think there's so much built around the playoffs, and it's like everything's boom or bust, and you can't have a normal season. People got to make decisions earlier based on how somebody does, and I don't know enough about it. I know it's high expectations. I coached at LSU, and a guy once told me, he said, that office you're in, that's not your office. You're borrowing it. And I knew right then that if you didn't win, you wouldn't be there long.
It's about as real as it gets, man. That is about as real as it gets. I do want to flip the script because Indiana is the current media darling, and I think it's really fun. I think it's really awesome. I think Indiana's a really good football team. I don't think they're the favorite, against a team like Ohio State, nor should they be. I mean, it's Indiana and it's Ohio State, and it looks like there is a collision course kind of lined up for Indy, which should be fun. And this was unnecessary roughness. They talked a little bit about some things. I just want to play it and react.
I think Indiana is just as good as Ohio State right now. We'll see when the Big Ten championship comes along. But for Indiana to just beat the fucking doors of UCLA, the most entertaining thing that happened during that game was Mark Ingram dancing on the sidelines. Like, literally, if you were watching that game, like, they kept going back to Mark dancing on the sidelines because that's how boring that game was, because Indiana was beating the fuck out of them. Like, Indiana fans right now have to be over the moon. And we talk about parity in general. Like, Indiana has in their minds and in everybody else's minds, has no business being that team that's just on Big Noon kickoff and on the Fox Big Noon game. And the most entertaining thing is a former Heisman Trophy winner from Alabama dancing on the sidelines. Indiana absolutely won the weekend. And I feel like the collision that's happening for the Big Ten championship is going to be awesome. And that's why I do love that divisions are gone in the Big Ten for that reason, because we're really, truly going to see these two teams like actually battle it out. I think Indiana is just as good as Ohio State.
So honestly, I had nothing really wrong with that. The caption is funny. There is no longer a gap between Indiana and Florida because I think there is kind of a clear gap. But I get the excitement. I think it's good for college football for there to be a level of excitement about Indiana. And while I think there is clearly a gap between the two, and I think that's okay to acknowledge, we can also sit here and like be really happy and excited about the season that Indiana's had and acknowledge that like it's coming, dude.
Coach,
like
another
like
10,000 foot
Sig
question.
like Sig is gonna get
with-
one at some
with
point.
Brian Kelly being fired.
Where's that coming from?
Got-
Oh. With the way things are going, like I think it's really important for people to keep talking about Indiana like they have a legitimate case for number one. That being said, don't run. It's gonna be a fun one, but Ohio State's gonna get after them. A couple of things that I found interesting and not really like big enough things for a segment. I thought this was pretty cool. Texas Athletics is set to announce the creation of Texas and O's, a syndicated TV talk show featuring interviews with athletes and Longhorn sports personalities. The show was developed and produced in collaboration with Longhorn Sports Proprieties. Learfield. Learfield's always in the middle of stuff like this, just for the record. And I just want to throw this up here. If you guys are not already following this Twitter account, Immaculate View is one of the most insightful, thoughtful, well-informed college football Twitter accounts that there is out there. And he quote tweeted it with this, or she quote tweeted it with this. Makes me wonder if the likes of Michigan and USC would rather do something like this on their own network than combine with the rest of the big. Got my attention, sparked my interest. I'm now interested. And then this from Matt Winter, who does a good job, was a couple things here and there. Shows, podcasts, and media networks featuring these athletes are starting to become popular and NIL-related ideas. Sponsorships can be sold and the revenue distribution to athletes as NIL compensation. In this syndicate model, the syndication fees can be also shared with the athletes. This is a way that Texas might be getting ahead of the curve a little bit, and I think that would be a really cool thing. One of the comments was, would any money distributed in this example be considered part of the revenue share numbers? And Matt said, depends on how everything is structured and how the money is paid. So again, just like more stuff that I think is interesting, I guess, in the NIL world. And then last thing I want to hit, because Ron and I are going to be watching this and reacting to it or giving our thoughts on it a little bit later, or not later, tomorrow on the Buckeye Roast. So make sure you like and subscribe and tune into that. The Buckeye Roast is awesome. Right here on Dead Air Sports. We love it. And we have this from the Caleb Downs and Josh Downs podcast when they had Julian Sayin on. So I'm excited to watch the whole episode. This is just a little clip from it that I thought was cool.
Is there anybody that Julian watches that's like, hey, like, I feel like my game kind of resembles that and like the attitude you play with? Because most people can't resemble the attitude that you have.
Yeah, I try to model it after Burrow. You know, he's someone who kind of plays almost like a point guard where he's dealing it, you know, getting the ball in the playmaker's hands. He's trying to find it. So I think that's kind of the way I'm trying to model my game after. I think a little bit kind of similar to the leadership style. I'm not, you know, not super outspoken.
I do wish that more people knew about the Psycho Joe, because it's funny because, like, I agree with Julian Sand on all the other fronts, like being a point guard, like not force-feeding Jeremiah the ball, like whoever's open, like death by 1,000 cuts, be an assassin, but I also have the armed talent to take it over the top. I'm hyper-accurate, ball placement specialist. But then it's like Joe is also a psycho. Like, we've seen Joe on the tire metros. Like, we've seen Joe be absolutely psychotic. We've seen Joe, like, you want to zero blitz me? Like, we've seen Joe has a unique level of competitive fire. I think, like, they compare him like a psychopath or whatever as a child, but whatever.
Kind of like him.
I thought that was really cool. I thought it was funny that I think I do know that, like, people in the Ohio sphere, or like Ohio State people, all know about kind of, you know, the Joe Burrow competitiveness. Same with LSU people, kind of the intensity that he brought. But like coast to coast, nationally, I'm not sure a lot of people know about like Joe, like having Mamba mentality, being hyper competitive. But that's all I got today. Make sure you like and subscribe, and then tap in tomorrow. I'm going to be on the Buckeye Roast with my guy Ron. And until then, I'll catch you guys soon. If you guys have any names for if you guys have like a name idea for this kind of video, let me know. I'm thinking about branding it. We'll see. But I'll be back, and we'll have I-71, I believe, on Friday. Yep, I-71 Friday, Buckeye Roast tomorrow. And I guess, like, peace. Catch you guys. I'm so bad at exits.